Hey folks, you're listening to Andrew Shearer, arts and culture reporter for USA Today, and I'm here with my friend Henrique Couto, and today we're going to be talking about his show, WeeklySpooky. Welcome, Henrique.
Thank you. I guess it's technically my show, but I like being welcomed anyway.
You know what? Treat yourself, my friend. So throughout October, if I'm not mistaken, you released an episode a day of this show, right?
Yes, sir. And it ended up being, I'm the consummate overachiever. So there were actually 32 releases in 31 days because I ended up having one extra. like I baked too many cookies. So there was one day that we dropped 2 shows in that single day.
I hear you. Well, I'm a fan of the show, in addition to being a friend of yours. But as is the case throughout the time that you've been doing this, and even when you would send me screenplays or new movies that you've made, you're like, can you check this out? And I'm like, what do I always say? Not at night.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I can't tell you how many times. I mean, I just finished recording, or as of us recording this, we just released episode 365 of the main Weekly Spooky show. And I record them in a dark room, just me, a microphone, and a computer screen. And the goal is really to creep myself out. It's not even a side effect. I try to sit alone in the room and because you hear yourself in the headphones and everything, I'm trying to work myself up the way I would work in a single person sitting in front of me in a dark room up if I was trying to scare them.
Okay.
That's what I try to go for. Although it some days it translates different. I mean, we have so many different kinds of stories that it's hard to really do that exact thing every time. Some of them are very conversational, some of them are very third person, stuff like that.
I'm familiar with all of the different ones because I, of course, am a subscriber to the show. But I wanted to, before we go into this interview, as far as that relates directly to Weekly Spooky, I want to ask you, how close are you to the 20th anniversary of your podcasting career?
Oh my gosh. That would probably be next year.
Okay, because that was my memory, that the first time I had heard of podcasting, but I just thought it was something you needed an iPod for. Yeah. But you were the first person I knew that was actually doing it. Can you just kind of talk about what it was like in the beginning,
sure,
versus kind of how it's changed for you now and what's made you stay with it?
It's funny because I had a podcast and was listening to podcasts so early in the cycle. I think the first podcast I downloaded, it was probably 2005. And I believe podcasts started in 2004. And back then you couldn't click subscribe. You had to go to a web page, copy an XML file, which is an RSS feed file. You had to copy it and paste it into a drop down in iTunes. And RSS feeds were invented for news gathering. Yeah. RSS feeds would be what would feed a aggregate blog or something like that. So you'd go to some news website and it would keep updating every time a story was published. And that was what made this really special for podcasting. It was okay, it's a on-demand internet radio show, but it updates itself into your listening environment. So you'd hit subscribe and then you'd know that when you woke up in the morning, the new one would be waiting for you. And back then when iPods were becoming all the rage, if you had it synced directly to your iPod, then that meant that every day when you took your iPod, unplugged it from your computer and headed out for your day, all of your podcasts would already be loaded and ready for you to listen to.
Yeah.
It took a lot of effort to get to that point. You had to have an iPod, which were pretty expensive early on. Yeah. And also just the technology was so new, it weirded people out. You had to have iTunes and be a power user of iTunes in order to. I remember the day, it was in 2006, when they introduced a button that if you clicked it, or a link, and if you clicked it, it would open up your iTunes and subscribe them like all in one go. And how insane that was, because before we were having to share like WikiHow articles, like subscribe to my podcast. So I had started a podcast in early 2006 called the Freak Forum. And it was just a running my mouth podcast. And I mean, I had a lot of fun with it. I did over 100 episodes of it. And I dabbled in live streaming. I dabbled in all those things, which is funny because like that stuff caught on like 3 or 4 years later, really caught on. So it's funny when you say it, because like to me, I was hardcore into podcasting for about 3 years. And then I took a pretty long sabbatical of just kind of like, being near and around podcasting. I had a lot of friends start podcasts kind of with my guidance or help or whatever, including yourself, obviously. So there was always like an air of podcasting around. And I'd also become obsessed with, and I've always been, but I know you have too, with literal storytelling, because my main job is, visual storytelling, movies, etc., television shows. But I've always loved the spoken word storytelling thing. It's just, I've always thought that was the coolest thing. I remember being in my early 20s and a lot of my friends in that age range being like, you really want to just like shut off all the lights in this hotel room and tell scary stories? And I was like, yes, why not? What could be cooler? It turned out a lot of things according to them, but, but that was something I'd always loved. And then I think it was 2010 or 2011, when I was like dipping my toe into a lot of musical stuff, I did a CD called Don't Listen in the Dark. And it had 4 very short, scary stories. I think they were each like 8 minutes long that I had written. And the first one had a cover of Monster Mash on it. It was just like a fun, silly thing for Halloween time. And I did that. I did another one the next year, and it was really fun. I remember enjoying the hell out of the experience of recording these little audiobooks. And I'd always been told like I had a voice for audiobooks. So, gosh, then like a few more years go, well, that was like a year or two go by, and I got contacted by this guy named Greg. I believe it's Craig Koshek is how you say his name. And he is the founder of actually one of the biggest horror podcasts there is, which is called Chilling Tales for Dark Nights. And at the time he was starting out as a YouTube channel, and he had heard one of my narrations and literally just said like, hey, if I send you an Edgar Allan Poe story, will you read it and let me put it on my channel? And I said, okay. So he took it and like put music to it and all this stuff. And it sounded awesome. We did a couple more like that. I know Craig is a very busy guy, but I'm a little salty. He never really answers my emails. Like when I launched WeeklySpooky, I was like, we should do some kind of cross promotion, since I was like one of like the first 6 narrators you used. And he was just kind of like, yeah. And then didn't really get back to me. Cause he's like literally one of the, like maybe in the top 10 in this genre is his podcast.
Well, right now.
Well, yeah, but he's been up there for a good while, but I mean, the podcast ecosystem is something I'm still kind of learning about. I've started to make more friends in that space. Darren Marlar from Weird Darkness, which is a really awesome daily podcast. He's like the nicest human being in the world. And he would, with zero, consternation, be like, I would be happy to promote your show. He was the nicest dude, still is. But anyway, so a few more years go by, and then I had been, and I'm sure you remember me talking about it forever. I'd been like, I just want to do a podcast, but it has to be sustainable.
Yeah.
Because doing like the Freak Forum, it was tough, especially like, I was working a job. I was very young. So it was very like, I didn't really have that much to say just yet. I had some stuff to say, but like, I wasn't there yet. And the big problem was I couldn't find someone to bounce off of consistently. And then it hit me like a sack of bricks. I was like, what if it was a scary story podcast? Because I love the idea of reading scary stories so much. And through the help of several friends, authors and such, I could find enough stories to publish one a week. So that was like the eureka, but also duh moment of like, oh, I should do that. And the craziest thing about Weekly Spooky's launch was that I think I came up with that idea in July or August, and it launched on Halloween Day, like from there. So we pulled it together really, really fast. And a lot of that was myself and my producer, Dan Wilder, on the show. Dan, especially in the first like 2 years, he was scouring the internet for authors that would want to be involved. He was also writing stories for the show. So he was very instrumental in getting the show to really happen. And there were a few weeks every now and then where I was sweating because I was like, we need a story and it's Monday. And like we publish on Wednesday. So
well, what year was that, man?
That was 2019.
Okay.
Yeah. It feels weird because starting in the second half of the year, I keep feeling like it started in 2020, but in reality, it started, 4 months out or whatever. So 3 months out. So, but yeah, that was like the big eureka moment of like, I love podcasting. I've been an avid podcast listener for forever, it feels like. And I wanted to come up with something I could consistently, be proud of and feel like delivers a ton of value to the listener, as long as they're a total, spooky nerd, just like me.
Yeah. Well, now you've got, you said 365 episodes?
And that's of the main show.
The main show. So, what's like the most popular episode?
Man, that's hard. That's really hard to gather. And I'll tell you why, because the performance metrics reset after 2 years.
Ah, okay.
So,
well, is there one that you just maybe got a lot of feedback on more so than others, or
yeah, there were a couple
personal favorite?
Personal favorite is that's tough because that's like picking your favorite child, which like obviously you have one, but you're not supposed to say. No, but ones that have stuck out a ton were stories like Charles Campbell's first. I think it was his first story on our podcast feed. Charles Campbell, great author, based out of South Carolina. He did a story called Pumpkin Spice and Nothing Nice. And that, I want to say that was either 2021 or I think it was 2021's Halloween season. We started with Pumpkin Spice and Nothing Nice. And I got so much feedback about that. So many people saying that was their first episode they ever heard. And then they got really into the show because it published like on the 29th of September, right when the Halloween, flood of listenership was coming to Weekly Spooky. And I was still at that point learning how to kind of harness that massive audience shift. So that's one I hear about all the time. Oh no, that's the one I've heard about a lot. Okay. I get a lot about Rob Field's stories because they're kind of a disparate universe. Okay. Where they're all, kind of in the same world. A lot of people talk a lot about the Angel of Death character, Reagan Devereaux from the earlier Strickfield stories. That's another one that I hear a lot. People saying like, we want more rage. And we're going to give you a little more rage. We wrapped her storyline up for the most part, but every now and then, she pops back up for a minute.
So you mentioned a couple people's names. I wanted to make sure that I touched on this because you don't like write every single episode. You've got a few different authors, and because someone will look at this podcast and hear your voice and might wrongly assume like he's responsible for all of this content,
which would be incredible if I could write that consistently and that diversely. I try to spotlight the authors as much as I can. We traditionally start every story with the title and by and their name to try to like make sure that comes across. And my favorite thing about this show is that we have so many interesting authors that have so many different styles. They're so different from each other. And you can really tune in one week and maybe not love the episode and the next week be totally engrossed with it because one week you could have a horror comedy. The next week you could have body horror. The next week after that, you could have a taut thriller. The week after that, you could have something that's appropriate for kids. It bounces a ton because spooky is a very broad spectrum.
Yeah.
But as far as, the authors go, I mean, our first story ever was Mischief Night by Shane Migliavacca. And Shane is a writer in upstate New York who I love his work so much. And he's written every story we've aired on Halloween Day since that first year.
Are these curated by you, or is there a way to submit?
So we do take submissions. It's one of those things I should really plug it a little bit more, because we've had a few incredible submissions, including one of my favorites was a writer who wrote in and said, "I don't listen to your podcast, but my wife does. And if you could read my story, and if you like it, read it on your show, it would really like blow her mind." And we ended up doing that. And I gave a little shout out to his wife at the beginning of it. It was a good story. But yeah, we accept submissions at weeklyspooky@gmail.com. The way it generally works is you send a story in, I read it, producer Dan reads it. And if we both like it, then it goes on the air. And once you've had a couple of stories pass scrutiny with Dan and I, you kind of end up in the inner circle to where really just send a story and it'll air like eventually. And we have a, big crowd, Rob Fields, Shane Migliavacca, Joe Solmo, Charles Campbell, David O'Hanlon, who wrote the Babysitter Massacre novelizations. Yeah. Dan Wilder, of course, and a bunch more authors that I will always forget somebody, but we have a lot of Bruce Haney, who's started writing like a ton of really interesting stuff. And Bruce Haney started out as a listener who was a nonfiction writer, and he submitted some fiction that he had never really gotten a chance to, submit anywhere before. So we definitely love getting submissions. We love taking a look and potentially featuring it on the show. Also, something I didn't realize until doing this podcast is authors have like no venue for short stories. There's like nowhere other than just like dumping it on a blog.
Huh.
That's what I've always been told, because so many of these authors, when they start submitting lots and lots of stuff, I would just be like, wow, that's a lot of stuff. And they're like, well, this ended up in some compilation nobody bought, or this ended up, on my website, and I don't think anybody's ever seen it, because it's easier to market a book than it is to get people to read a short story. So a lot of authors were like thankful for a place to get their short stories heard and have an audience kind of develop from it. Which is something I was not prepared for. I did not expect that to be a byproduct of doing the show.
Wow, that's wild. When I was an avid fiction reader, I always enjoyed and preferred magazines full of short stories and short story compilation books and anthologies to like straight up novels. And that really kind of leads into my next question, which is, your podcast isn't just these spooky stories. You've also got a few other type of episodes that are in here, and I was wondering if you can kind of talk about when you started to do those and why. I'm a big fan of the Terrifying and True. Is that what it's called? Yeah. Because I'm not a true crime person, but I do like want to hear you talk about these famous stories, and so I listen to those as well. But also, you've also got the well, talk about some of the other shows.
Sure. So what happened was, I want to say it was in 2022. We had our biggest Halloween season ever, and it was insane. I mean, the amount of listenership, I think it went up by like 15 or 20 times what it normally was. And then it didn't drop all the way back down. We had a lot of people hang out, and I had just at that point partnered with iHeartMedia, because that's how the show is supported. The show is entirely ad supported. We have a Patreon for bonus episodes and stuff, but overall, it's advertising that drives the show. Whenever anybody says like, there's too many ads, it's like, I don't know what to tell you. It's either that or there's no show. Like, I can either give you a free audiobook or I cannot. Cause we've done shows where like it's a 3-hour free audiobook. So either there's going to be commercials or it's just not going to exist. But when that happened, it started to make the show a bit more viable, but also it became a machine where the people downloading were hungry for more content. So the first show I dipped my toe in was Terrifying and True, which is true crime and folklore and urban legends, which I'm not the biggest true crime person in the world, although I do find them fascinating, but I am a just obsessive folklore and urban legends person. And that's been one of the most fun elements of that show has been doing these pieces that dive super, super meticulously deep into things like Resurrection Mary in Chicago, or the Marie Celeste ship where everybody vanished. I mean, we've done a little over, I think we've done 115 episodes of Terrifying and True now.
Yeah,
And
I'm more of a consumer because I'm a writer of nonfiction, so I've been more of a nonfiction reader in my adult life. But I have to say, even some of those episodes, have, and the Weekly Spooky, when it started, I was like, Enrique, I love this show, but man, I'm getting creeped out. Like, I'm really susceptible to the like campfire story kind of thing. Even that, was it Friday the 13th too that starts out like
yeah,
that?
I'm going to give it to you
Okay,
straight about Jason.
that is the scariest scene to me in any of those movies. It's just, I am creeped out by that. And the Terrifying and True, I'm like, it's like, I'm curious, but I can't listen to these at night because you still read them in that same, the Weekly Spooky
Oh
voice.
yeah.
And,
No, if
and
anything,
it's,
we get creepier on there. Yeah.
yes, it's good. But folks, if you were listening, this is being recorded at like noon.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so thanks for that. But I wanted to ask, like, who does the research and the writing for those episodes? Because you
We
also have a
use,
new feature that you're doing this week in horror, right?
yeah. We have freelancers that do Terrifying and True because that's a lot less. Um, I guess the best way to put it would be it's a lot more technical and a lot less fun than fiction. So nobody's pounding down the door to, research and write. But what's
You're talking about
really,
my entire career with
you get, yeah, and you don't do it for free, right?
no, absolutely not.
But with Terrifying and True, the thing that's really benefited the show is, as the technology has grown, you can now do a lot of the research very efficiently and quickly using ChatGPT and Google Gemini and things like that. So it's gotten to a point where it costs way less money to create a much longer program. That's why a lot of the episodes now are in the 40-minute range, is the cost per word to get these research pieces done has dropped a ton. So a lot of that is done through, research, freelancers, and just the technological advancements, have helped a ton. So that's for the most part how we're able to pop out so many Terrifying and Trues. And with This Week in Horror History, which I just launched this week, that one is just hella fun, and it really is as simple as, like, the research for that can be done in a matter of minutes now. I can do a annotated ChatGPT scrape of the internet of, like, what things in horror happened November 3rd through 9th.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll give me a bunch, and I can kind of punch through it and dig around and try to, find the gold in there. So,
Yeah.
and it used to be that would have been super hard. It would have been very, very hard to pull together. And now it's bizarrely simple. And I'm hoping people like that show. That's one I'm experimenting with. It's very different from, it's not as different from, it's like, I'm trying to think of the word. It's like a merge between what I'm doing with Cutting Deep into Horror, the movie review show, and Monthly Spooky, which is like the month end talk show. But it kind of combines those with, like, Terrifying and True, because I have a script and I have information I'm getting across, but I try to be a little bit more in the moment and have fun with it, because I'm talking about old horror movies and TV shows, and I generally have an opinion about all of those and a lot of nerding out to do as well.
Well, that was something that I just wanted to personally ask about. But first, I want to say that more than anything that you've created for Weekly Spooky, it is that show, the one that debuted this week. Say the name of it again.
This Week in Horror History.
Okay, that one has like, that is like, seems like tailored for me, because I am like I love trivia, and things like trivia will spark me to, like, I texted you after I'd listened to it. I went and rewatched The Prowler. And when I was listening to your description of it, I was in the car, which is mostly where I listened to it. I you even like, I was thinking about it going like, okay, I know that Tom Savini was a combat photographer and it informed his ability to represent really like anatomically correct gore on screen, and that was kind of the hallmark of one of the things that made him very unique. And then like maybe a beat or two later, there you mention it, and I was like, that's it. I'm watching The Prowler, So if you want to know how it goes over for just somebody like me, that's the perfect combination right there.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that it'll be. I mean, it's a really fun show to do, and to get into the nuts and bolts, it's so helpful that it can be recorded ahead, because the week in horror history doesn't change, like the
Right.
calendar's set, so I can very easily sit down and record a month's worth of them in one go if necessary, so that I can have a life. Because with the introduction of This Week in Horror History, Weekly Spooky is now publishing an average of 5 days a week.
Yeah.
So
that's
a
almost
lot.
going to be daily spooky.
By podcasting standards, it is daily once you're beyond 4 episodes a week.
Okay.
It's considered daily.
Spooky.
And that's been a really a cool experience. I mean, I love publishing all the time. I love the fact that the audience can come and go as they please. They know that if they come on Wednesday, they get a scary story. They know if they come on Friday, they're going to get a surprise. It could be cutting deep into horror episode about a movie. It could be a compilation of some of the best, scary stories. That's been something that's been super fun to do, by the way, is doing like the 7 stories of ghostly murder, or 5 tales of dastardly drinks. Because we have over 300 episodes to choose from, we can put these little compilations together. And I had wondered when we first started doing the compilations if people would be like, oh, these are just reruns. And all the comments are positive. They're either people who'd never heard the show, or people are like, man, it's been so long since I heard that one. It was cool to hear it again. And I'm like, good. I'm glad you're enjoying it. And then Sundays are unknown broadcast, and I don't know what the hell's going on with that. I'm going to stay in character on that one.
Speaking of character, I have to ask, when did you find this voice? Because I know you personally, and I think people that have followed you, as a podcaster, you're pretty much you. But for the purposes of Weekly Spooky and these other shows too, for This Week in Horror History, it's a lot more. You're a lot more loose with it, and there's a little bit more of your personality in there. But yeah, I wanted to know when you found the voice, because it's a little Shatner, but not like it's like spooky Shatner. How'd you
Sure.
like? How long did it take you to come up with that cadence?
Very long, actually. Probably 3 years to kind of find a tone that was consistent. The problem is I'm by nature, a very fast talker and a very fast reader. If I sit down and actually do it,
Right.
Like the challenge with reading, imagine that, to find out I have ADHD, 20 years later, I could never sit down and read to save my life. That was actually one of the funniest things about doing Weekly Spooky, is it was like, oh, I'll have to sit down and read every week. Whew, that's a dream that I have failed to accomplish for a long time. But, but like what happened was, the more I worked on it, the more I would notice, like when I would flub a line, it was because I was rushing. And the more I would work on it, the more I would realize, like, I need a consistent cadence that allows me the time to prepare to pronounce the word ahead of me, that kind of thing. Yeah. And then from there also, like, the more I would listen back to them, like on Weekly Spooky, it really depends on the story. If it's a first person narrative, unless the main character is particularly devious, I'm going to be talking somewhat like this, maybe a little bit, more dulcet, a little bit calmer, to make it soothing. Because I know that a lot of people listen to talk to relax.
Yeah, occasionally, one of the fiction ones, definitely you'll occasionally throw in some like emphasis with the person's voice if it's not first person.
And characters are always fun too, things like that. But then if it's a third person story, I'm going to lean more into the up close to the microphone. And then he opened the door, and what he saw, he wished
It's
he never, like that kind of thing.
yeah, I can imagine you with a flashlight under your
Oh
face
yeah,
while I'm listening.
that's the goal. And with Terrifying and True, that's most of the cadence for that, because that's what I mean. I'm reading information that is creepy. So it's a lot of that nice, slow delivery to make sure you catch everything and that I don't stumble over my words. So, but it took me a really long time and I still struggle with it. The worst is when I have a crazy deadline, which I had an entire month of crazy deadlines, and this month is going to be okay. It's November, but December is going to be crazy. I don't have an account yet, but it's probably going to be 25 shows in December. We have a ton of Christmas themed everything. We have Christmas. We have a few Christmas themed Terrifying and Trues I'm really excited about, including the horrible truth behind a Victorian Christmas about how like everything you celebrated Christmas with during the Victorian era would kill you. Like everything was made of lead or had like DC current flowing through it and was on top of dry, brittle trees. It's a really, really fascinating deep dive.
Oh, I can't wait. Oh man.
Next week I'm actually finishing it up right now. Next week we publish the dark realities of the Pilgrims and the Indians. And it's not the one you're thinking of. Everybody whenever people want to get all high and mighty about Thanksgiving and the Pilgrims and the Indians, they start talking about the massive wars, but that was like 60 years later. That was not during the actual Pilgrims and Indians time. But the time period that the Pilgrims were at Plymouth and they were making peace treaties with the Indians, it was really, really a terrifying time to be alive. The Wampanoag people who had made a peace treaty with the Pilgrims, they had just been through an epidemic and lost nearly all of their tribe. They were desperate and scared. And the Pilgrims had lost half of their people from the first winter when they landed on Plymouth. So it's a really cool, like different lens to look at history. And that's been also keeping me very excited, is reading these papers, reading these research papers about all these things. I don't know. I love to learn. So I love that kind of thing.
Yeah. You and I have been friends for, last year we hit 20 years, and I've always known you as like a skeptic and a bit of an almost contrarian. And then I listen to these shows that you're doing and I kind of like, man, I wish Henrique would break and just make an aside about some of this stuff. Like how has this, like, how are you, I guess, juggling those two things? Because you've got the work that needs to be done, but you've also got your personal feelings about or opinions going on at the same time.
Well, it's a fine line. When a program is presented as a interpretation of folklore, for instance, then there's no real need to put a counterpoint, because we already know these are tall tales, stories that some people believe and some people don't.
I know that, but I just mean your own inner thing, your natural, like, I guess you just tend to, it's been a great pleasure as being your friend over the years, just hear your takes and opinions.
Oh, sure. Well, and like where it gets into tricky territory is like we did the biggest episode of Terrifying and True ever, which was the Ed and Lorraine Warren deep dive, takedown, whatever you want to call it, because that was like almost 3 hours of information. And we did literally the first half with almost no skeptical commentary. And then the second half is only skeptical commentary, tearing down a lot of their lies and things like that. I tried to be as fair as I could, because to a lot of people, they did a lot of good. And I don't want to disrespect that. And to a lot of people, they're very heroic, but there's clearly a lot of questions about like Ed and Lorraine Warren. So I debated that a lot. It's funny when it comes to like ghost stories and things like that on Terrifying and True, I don't feel the need to be very skeptical anymore, because I feel like it's kind of obvious that you're hearing a ghost story. So it very well could not be at all true. It's actually when I'm reading true crime that sometimes I have to sit as I'm reading and go, do I make a comment about how stupid I think the death penalty is? Or do I make a comment about how how the law they passed to help with whatever is actually not going to help at all? Because that stuff I still get very frustrated about very easily. like, like I said, I try not to go too crazy, but there was the one story a few years back about a trick-or-treater that got shot. They were on a porch. They thought they were a foreign exchange student, and they thought they were at a different house than they were, and they were pounding on the door, and they got shot. And I tried not to like get too frustrated, but like it's a terrible thing that happened. But then the research we did was like all about all the politicians who had looked into, you know, all of these background check laws and everything on guns. And I couldn't help but mention, like, as an aside, none of those laws would have prevented this death, because this death has nothing to do with any of those elements of gun ownership. Right. The person legally owned the gun, was legally in their house, and they demanded the person go away. But unfortunately, like I said, a foreign exchange student didn't have a good command of English. So it was really just a total, you know, tragedy of errors. But yeah, so those drive me crazy more than anything. Sometimes I'll have to sit down and annotate the script and be like, do I want to put my personal flair in there? Because I would never say anything I don't stand by.
Sure.
But, you know, throwing out that stuff, you know, can be tricky. Now, on the other hand, Monthly Spooky, I skewer ghost claims and UFO claims like there's no tomorrow. Yeah, Michelle and I both will really tear down if it's clear somebody is a charlatan. We go friggin' hard on them on Monthly Spooky.
Well, I have to say, I do have a couple really important things that I want to ask about the show itself. But I also don't want to forget to just mention, I told you that the Melonheads episode is probably my favorite. I had a favorite before that, but this is my new favorite, because I'm telling you, I went through every emotion while listening to that. I'm also a skeptic, and I'm also, you know, I deal in facts and research, just, you know, as a career. And so, you know, my first instinct is to laugh at, I was thinking about Lemonheads the candy.
Oh yeah.
And not Melonhead, you know what I mean? I was like, oh, this is like Lemonhead the candy. So I'm laughing at it, not taking it seriously. But then the more it gets into the story, I'm like, oh, this is awful. And then as it gets more, and I was like, oh no, I know like 2 people who have hydrocephalic children. And I was like, oh God, I'm a jerk. But this is also, you know what I mean? So I went through, I went through all these things while listening to it. And I was like, what just happened?
That's the joy of folklore and urban legends too. I mean, like, no, that makes me happy too, because I had such a bad experience getting that story written.
It's an Ohio story, right?
Yeah, Ohio, Michigan, and they're also lemon. See, you got me doing it,
right?
Melonhead stories, I think, through Pennsylvania and Connecticut as well.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple different cities on there, but I think what made me want to check that one out was just because I didn't know about this. Wasn't a story I'd ever heard before. Yeah,
and that's been really the funnest part of doing Terrifying and True, is finding stories and folklore, because now I have a notepad in my phone, and I will be like watching TV or something, and I'll hear, you know, a story about like, around the same time, John Wilkes Booth's corpse was was supposedly being toured for money at blah, blah, blah. And I'll jot down like John Wilkes Booth corpse tour. Like, you know, maybe that should be a Terrifying and True episode. Like, yeah.
What bands were opening? Okay. I do want to ask though, and I think a lot of people are curious about this. Can you make a living as a podcaster? And if so, what are some of the things that one would definitely have to do in order to do that?
Woof. I mean, that is the, you know, the $80 question. I was going to say $1 million question. I was like, yeah, not a fat chance on that one.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, Weekly Spooky has, as of this year, has started to pull its weight substantially to the point where it's about half of my income has become the podcast. And I'm very happy about that. I'm shocked, but I'm very happy that that's happened. But as far as, you know, podcasting, it's like anything else. You need to dedicate a certain amount of time knowing nothing may come back and be okay with that. And then you need to constantly be obsessing over what is the audience I'm serving, what is the niche I'm filling, who is this for? That's a real big challenge, both in podcasts and in movies.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many times someone's asked me, like, how do I, distribute my movie? And I'm like, well, who's it for?
Right.
And they don't have an answer. And it's like, well, then you gotta come up with that answer. And then when they do have the answer, I'm like, the problem is you should have came up with that answer before you made the movie.
Yep.
So it's very similar with podcasts. And there are a lot of different methods to monetizing podcasts. Like, I'm one of the few podcasters I know that is mostly supported by ads. Most of the folks I know who do well in podcasting, it's all Patreon and memberships. That's where they make their living. But for me, Patreon, we have a few supporters that I really appreciate, and I'm happy to provide them bonus stories and things like that to enjoy. But that's a very small portion of the audience and the support that the show gets. We mostly are ad supported. So when you're ad supported, you have a larger but slightly less intense audience, as opposed to having a small but very intense audience who would all, support you on Patreon or become a member and pay you every month or what have you. So there are a lot of ways. It's never been easier and it's never been harder at the same time. And that's so classic in any kind of show business space, but it's never been easier to get a good microphone, to get yourself sounding good, to publish. It's never been easier, which means it's never been harder to get noticed because there's so many shows going. So yeah, honestly, a lot of my planning when I started Weekly Spooky failed. Like, I was like, we're going to do cross promotion with, these podcasts because I know them. I've been fans of them for a long time. None of that happened at all. I didn't get a single like cross promo podcast thing at all for like the first 2 or 3 years of Weekly Spooky, at least.
Wow.
So it ended up being like all about consistency and finding the audience. And it took a really long time. When I sat down and said, I'm going to do Weekly Spooky, I said I would do 100 episodes before I would even consider quitting.
Right.
And no joke, we had like 60 downloads an episode until like episode 93. Like, wow. And then all of a sudden we started having a lot more listeners. So, and that just put the spring in my step to keep going. So really the big thing with a podcast, especially is be consistent. If you say you're going to do it every week, do it every week. I have not missed a week ever on Weekly Spooky.
Yeah, sometimes to a detriment. I can definitely. I don't think you mind me saying that.
No, it's been incredibly exhausting at certain times, and I'm just now 6 years in, starting to really learn how to schedule my time right and how to get the shows ready in a more efficient way. Like this October, I was so organized that things went well. Even, I mean, like, for as crazy as that month was, there was only one day in the entire month that I was recording the next day's show. Everything else I had like a buffer. Things were planned way out in advance. And that's what I'm trying to, get ready with for December. So it's a lot, but yeah, never missed a Wednesday. I did have one time the show came out like 7 hours late. And I had COVID, like literally the show is me with a Raspberry Pi. Like I did it anyway.
Sure. I remember that.
And in hindsight, I should have just taken the day off, but it is what it is. So yeah, be consistent, feed the audience that you want to. And then most importantly, pick something that you believe you can do every week, that you won't hate doing it eventually or get really sick of it. That's the big one. Like, I love scary stories, and no matter what my mood is, if I can pull myself into the story I'm reading, I am all in. I am fully excited. That's how I feel about the terrifying intrudes. I love to learn. Sometimes I can be squeamish, so sometimes the true crime ones will depress the hell out of me when they're over.
Yeah,
Uh,
the Donner Party one, that was recently.
yeah,
I can remember going like, "Oh, everybody's heard of the Donner Party." I know. Do I know?
that's
Wait a
why I
minute.
wanted to do it. Because I
Yeah,
had
I
that
figured,
attitude. I was like, oh yeah, I know about that. Wait, do I?
right?
Where did I
And
learn about it?
at a point, I was just like, "Oh man, don't like it."
It's a harrowing and tragic story, but there's also like some incredible heroicism that got those people out that had survived out of the situation. So and that's the other thing too, is I love diving deep because you unearth things that you never would have learned from a conversation or a 12-minute YouTube documentary or whatever. That's the other thing, is that as time has gone on, the audience has made it clear that they like long programming. So we can do an hour about the Donner Party. We can do an hour scary story. We can do a 2-hour cutting deep into horror. We can do a 2.5-hour monthly spooky. They seem to really get a kick out of
Yeah, and on a long drive, that means you don't have to find something else to listen to. You can just,
it. Yeah,
hit it and go. Uh,
exactly.
so, this is the last question I'll have, and then I'll open it up to whatever I missed, and you can help me with that part. I wanted to know, if a producer were to call, and this could be a producer of movies, of television, or anything, if someone were to just call with an open purse, what's something you would love to be able to do with Weekly Spooky? What would your answer be?
Man, that's tough. Yeah, because I don't know. I mean, I would love to. I would love to have more intensive production.
Hmm.
As it stands right now, when I do the shows, any music cues or sound effects you hear, I mean, I'm doing that myself. I'm sitting down and doing that. And some weeks there is not as much time as others to do that stuff.
Hmm.
But also some stories I find creepier when it's just a voice and you. And then some of them I'm like, oh, but if I lay in, crickets chirping right here, it might really put it over the edge.
It does.
Sometimes that's the
It
bess, because
does.
then you'll be like, are there, like, I'm wearing noise canceling headphones. Why am I hearing the night around me?
Oh God, I hate it. I mean, I love it, but I gotta tell you that it's effective.
But so if we had like, some kind of, big budget version of the Weekly Spooky podcast, I guess it'd mostly be in production, and it would be nice to have a set schedule with, authors writing specific things and a little bit less slapdash. Although that could kill the fun of the show. So maybe not that one, but I would definitely love for it to have, more production, music cues, sound effects, things like that. I think that would be really, really cool. Although I do get emails from people who say that they appreciate the modestness of the sound effects because they have trouble concentrating.
Oh yeah. No,
So
it's
yeah.
just right. Man, Enrique, I was thinking of you going like, oh, if Shudder were partner with me on This Week in Horror History and let me do like a series on their show or their channel or something like that.
Oh, if you mean like beyond the realm of podcasting, I mean,
I'm just saying, money's no
yeah.
object in this hypothetical scenario.
Well, you know me, the only thing I turn down is my collar on my
That's
Hawaiian
right,
shirt.
the
So,
late great John Witherspoon.
but I mean, I would love to have more partnership with brands. I would love to have something like a show about horror movies or about horror genre, horror media or whatever, on
Mhm.
like a Shudder or a Screambox or something like that. That would be really, really fun. I can't say the name of the network, but there was a small, well, not small, a large independent TV network that we were talking very briefly about trying to bring some form of weekly spooky content to one of their channels.
Mhm.
And I was really excited about it. I was willing to do it for free, as long as I could promote the brand on the show. I would be happy. So, that's the kind of thing that would definitely be a lot of fun, would be just to get people excited about horror media in a way that's not snarky or negative. That's something really important. And I don't want to even crap on the people who do, be a little snarky or be a little negative. It's hard to make content all the time that's interesting and that engages people. Engagement is everything. And
Mhm.
unfortunately that makes for a very strained society. Sometimes it feels,
Yeah.
that it's like, well, you're not winning unless somebody's yelling at you. Great.
Yeah. That's the mark for things that are going to, stand the test of time.
Yeah, well, it tells advertisers they're paying attention. So
Sure.
so when I sit and talk about a horror movie I love, or a horror history, and a movie like They Live pops up, or Gojira, movies that I have a massive soft spot for, I just want to say, like, I love this. I'm happy to own that I'm a dork and a nerd, and that I, sit and watch my 4K of They Live and go, wow, you can really see the details in the faces. That's just who I am. And if you're at all like me, then you're in the right place.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Has it affected your ability to watch like horror? Just now being so familiar with so many scary stories and tropes and cliches, are you still pretty much feel like that's a whole separate part of your brain?
I'm thinking about it because I hadn't really thought about that. I don't think it's affected me much. I just love to be scared. I love to be entertained. I love for a film to just take me somewhere else and show me something interesting. And, my expectations are that I don't need the wheel reinvented every single day. I don't need, that always fascinates people. Are like, it was fine. I'm like, dude, fine is awesome. Like,
Yeah.
your car did a fine job of getting you to work today, and you're very happy with that. Imagine how mad you are when it doesn't get you to work.
Yeah.
So I just, I will say that I think a lot about the storytelling aspect as far as like beat structure, and endings. I think a lot about endings after doing 300 some endings on Weekly Spooky. Endings definitely pull me in. But one of my favorite movies, did you ever see Scare Me?
Yeah.
Scare Me's so good. It's literally a movie of two people trying to scare each other, telling them other stories in a cabin. It's so good.
Yeah. No, trust me. I'm on Letterboxd, and I all the time think of making like just the best two-handers, or even like single person horror, because there's so many that I'll catch, and I'll go like, you know how it goes, man. You just go like, okay, what about this? And then suddenly you're like, holy crap. Like, I'm almost angry that I didn't think of it.
Yeah. No, same. Big same. Huge same.
All right, well, that's all I had for you. You and I could make this 2 hours if we wanted to, but I wanted to open it up to you in case there's anything that I didn't touch on that you want to make sure that people listening to this understand, know, or just make clear. Anything else that you'd want to do with it?
Well, I'll share something related to what you mentioned earlier when you were talking about getting across more of my personality.
Mm-hmm.
Because after doing 80 or so episodes of Weekly Spooky, I did fall into like a really dark headspace for a minute of believing it was just not going to click or be successful. And no joke, one of the thoughts I had for how to fix the show was to remove myself as like the host in quotes, to just have the stories be the entire thing, not do the intro, not talk to the audience at all, just a story and then it's over. And I really got it in my head for a minute that like, if I wasn't an active part talking to the audience, that the show would do better, that I was the problem.
Oh my gosh.
I you know how it is to be a creative person. Like sometimes you just think dumb.
But man, anyone listening to this is going to be like, thank you for not doing that.
Well, and that's the thing is what at the heart of it, Weekly Spooky is my love letter to Tales from the Crypt and Tales from the Dark Side and Twilight Zone. I love the idea like, sit down. We have another one for you. Come here, relax. Here's another one for you. I love that concept. So I got goosebumps like thinking about all those times that you'd return to your TV and it was like you'd never left. Here's another, story for you to think about. Alfred Hitchcock Presents was the other big one for me.
Monsters, I loved. And the Friday the 13th, the series. I mean, theirs are all hit and miss. Ray Bradbury Theater.
Oh, sure.
But you did the heavy hitters right off the top.
Oh yeah, and I mean our theme song is very inspired by Tales from the Crypt. And I loved the idea of, we open it with, hey, this story is going to be interesting, like whatever, I love doing the intros, but after we started to really catch on, I actually had the opposite thought. I was like, I wish there was more of me in the opening and closing, but I don't want the opening and closing to be so long that you're like, when is the story
Oh,
starting?
sure. Yeah.
So, and there's only so much information you can get across in like 2.5 minutes. So that was the birth of Monthly Spooky. This idea that at the end of the month, if you're so inclined, you could tune in and it's a talk show with me and my buddy Michelle. But we talk about the spooky things that we love. We talk about, weird news stories, and there's usually some topic we'll deep dive into together and react to it together. And I wanted to mention that because I really proved myself wrong. That ended up becoming very popular, and I got a lot more, for lack of a better term, intimate with my audience. A lot more of my audience speaks to me directly now, and they kind of know what I'm about. So I'm really glad I put myself out there like that. And it's funny though, because like a year earlier, I was like, maybe I'm the only problem with this show. And then a year later, I'm like, I'm going all in on me.
Well, yeah, you were a brand before Weekly Spooky. I know you know that, and people absolutely love you. And Michelle is my favorite person that you play off of out of this, coming in on 2 decades of your podcasting. I love Michelle.
Oh,
I think
Michelle's the best.
what the two of you have as personalities just goes together so well. But I remain a fan and a supporter, and thanks for not asking me whether you should take yourself out of the show.
Yeah, I know what you would have said, which would be reason. So
I'm just like that. I'm always good for that.
But no, and thank you, man, for sitting down with me, because honestly, I wanted to give the audience a little bit of an opportunity to see like behind the curtain of what we do, how the sausage is made a little bit.
Yeah.
And you're the best person I could think of to ask like questions people would actually want to know the answers to. Cause if I sit down, I'll be like,
No, I mean, trust me, that's part of what I do. Is I'm just driven by curiosity as you are. And so, thank you for choosing me. I'm not only a fan, but I'm also just a longtime supporter of what it is that you do. And I've found all the different phases interesting, but I'm happy to see you doing something where it is not only thriving, but also like is something you're happy to continue to return to, and a chord that you've struck with a large audience.
I can't tell you how wild and wonderful it has been and how good it's felt. About halfway through October, when I was just like tired every day, because I mean, to feed the beast, I was up at 8 and done working at 8 every day, 8 to 8, 8 to 8, 8 to 8, 8 to 8. It was just the only way to get everything done. But when I would be like out doing something and I'd run into somebody I knew and they'd ask things, I would start telling them about why I was exhausted. And, I wasn't trying to be negative, but I wasn't being very positive. And I realized about the third time I was going through that with somebody, I was like, you know what? I'm just the king of good problems to have.
For the most part. Sure, you're not complaining. It's just life.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I've got to record so many podcasts because people will listen to them. Oh, I've got at the end of the day, I wake up every day and go, hell yeah, let's get some spooky going.
Yeah, man. It's like if you work in a bakery, they're like, man, you always smell like cake. Jealous?
Yeah.
You're welcome. I don't know what to say to that.